All right, we're in our last section of chapter 7, and we're not talking about triangles today. We're going to be talking about quadrilaterals. Not every section in this chapter has been about triangles, but a lot of them have. We started off talking about vertical and adjacent angles, then we moved to complementary and supplementary angles. We're going to review those tomorrow and Thursday, plus you're going to get your quiz back today, so we'll talk about that from the quiz. And then we did do a lot of triangle stuff. But today we're doing quadrilaterals, and quad meaning four, lateral meaning side, means that we have a polygon here with 4 sides. That's your first blank. So a quadrilateral is a polygon that has 4 sides. That word polygon, poly means many-sided. Gon's another way of saying side or angle. So we got shapes here that have many angles or many sides. That's what a polygon means. There are lots of different types of polygons. Triangles are the smallest polygons you can have, because the smallest number of sides you can have on a polygon is 3. Poly means many. 3 is not that many, I understand that, but it gets really big. Quadrilaterals have 4 sides, pentagon have 5, hexagons, heptagons, octagons have 8, nonagons, decagons, undecagons, dodecagons, the list continues. And if you really are that interested in it, you can Google all the different names of the specific types of polygons, but we just refer to all of them as polygons. And specifically the ones with 4 sides are quadrilaterals. Now, one thing that's true about every polygon is it has straight sides, no curves. So always has straight edges, okay? So you're going to notice that when you look at your triangles and your quadrilaterals. So this is a quadrilateral, 4 sides. There's nothing special about this one. If you asked me what this one was called, I'd say that's just a quadrilateral. But there are different types of quadrilaterals, just like there's different species of animals, right? There's different ways you can classify animals, you can classify different plants. You can do the same thing with shapes. And there's 3 main families for quadrilaterals. The first family, and that you've heard of before, is the trapezoid family. Trapezoids, to be a trapezoid, you have to be a quadrilateral that has exactly 1 pair of parallel sides. Exactly 1 pair. It doesn't have to be the top and bottom. It could be the left and right sides, but you can see the trapezoid here. Now, is the top side the same size as the bottom side? No, that's not going to be true on a trapezoid. Also, trapezoids can look like this. You've probably seen them look like this before. Still only have 1 set of parallel sides. Now, the little red arrows indicate which sides are parallel. So when you see those red arrows, that's what they're trying to tell you is these sides are parallel. So that's a trapezoid, okay? One of the newer families that you probably have not heard of or discussed much with quadrilaterals is the kite family, okay? To be a kite, you have to be a quadrilateral that has 2 pairs of congruent adjacent sides. Now, can someone remind me what the word adjacent means? Jude?
Opposite sides.
That's not opposite.
Same side, like I don't know express, but I know what it is. I just can't describe it.
Okay. Hannah? They're not equal necessarily. Addison? So if we're talking about adjacent angles, they will share a border. You're right. Yeah. And so that adjacent, because they're sharing something, here these adjacent sides aren't sharing a side, they're sharing an angle. Okay, that's what they're sharing. It just means next to. Okay. So on a kite, you've got 2 sides that share that angle on the right side, and you've got 2 sides that share this angle on the left side, and those sides are equal. Okay, not all the sides are equal, just the 2 that are next to. So on the right side, you got 2 sides that are equal to each other. And on the left side, you have 2 sides that are equal to each other. So congruent means same size, adjacent means next to. The angle measurements are not the same. Did you notice that? The 2 angles that I circled, not the same size. They don't have to be. Just the sides that are next to each other. So you're going to have 2 equal sides on one side and 2 equal sides on the other side. And it's the only one up here that actually does look like a kite, like the same kind of kite that you would fly out in the sky, right? Now, not every kite that you're going to fly out in the sky is going to have that same shape. But when we're talking about kites in math, we're talking about a quadrilateral that meets these requirements. Okay, so that's a kite. That's our new one. And then the most popular family of quadrilaterals is the parallelogram family. So again, there's 3 main families. You got the trapezoid family, the kite family, and the parallelogram family. And the parallelogram family has lots of descendants. Okay, so to be a parallelogram, you have to be a quadrilateral with opposite sides that are parallel and congruent. Okay, so opposite sides are parallel and congruent. So you see the arrows up there. You got two sides that have one arrow showing they're parallel, and two sides that have two arrows showing that they're parallel. You also have one side, there's two sides that have one tick mark showing they're the same size. And you have two sides that have two tick marks showing that they're the same size. So that's a parallelogram. Now, you read that definition and you might be thinking, well, isn't that true about rectangles? Don't rectangles have opposite sides that are equal and parallel? Well, yeah, that's because a parallelogram is kind of like the main family. A rectangle is a specific type of parallelogram. Rectangles are parallelograms that have 90-degree angles. So if you have a shape that meets all the requirements from up here, plus it has 4 right angles, then that shape is now called a rectangle. Now, if you have a parallelogram and it doesn't have 4 right angles, but all the sides are congruent, all 4 sides are the same size, then that's called a rhombus, or the plural of a rhombus is called rhombi. And then if you have a shape that meets all the requirements from a parallelogram, has 4 right angles and 4 equal sides, that's now called a square. So a square is the shape you get when when a rectangle and a rhombus have a baby, right? If you meet the requirements of a rhombus, you have 4 equal sides. You meet the requirements of a rectangle, 4 right angles, you're now talking about a square. So these are the shapes we're going to need to know for our homework tonight and for our test on Friday. You guys have any questions about these? I'm assuming the kite's probably the only new one for you guys. The rest of them you've seen. Maybe you didn't know the exact definition of them. They're here now. Okay. So when this question came up in the last class, what if it's a rhombus, but I put the word parallelogram down? Would you give me credit for that? Now, a rhombus is a parallelogram, but on your homework and on your test, I'm going to want the most specific name that you can give me. Otherwise, someone would get by trying to put quadrilateral down for every single one of them. It sounds like something someone in here might try. I want the most specific name. Yes, they're all going to be quadrilaterals on tonight's homework. Give me the most specific name that you can. So we're going to practice that right here. I've got some shapes here. You can use your diagram that I gave you up there, and we're going to need to classify these. So the first shape looks like it's got 4 right angles and 4 equal sides. What do I call this shape, Maddox? This is a square. Well, isn't a square a rectangle? Yeah, it is, but I don't want the non-specific name. I want the most specific name for that. What about example B? I don't see any right angles. I don't see any parallel sides either. So if it doesn't have parallel sides, you know it's not in the parallelogram family. That eliminates like 4 shapes. What do you call this one, Hannah? Okay. It's a kite. Yeah, it's our new one. You've got 2 adjacent sides over here that are the same size. So they're congruent. And you got 2 adjacent sides on this side that are also congruent. And that's the definition of a kite. Next shape. 4 equal sides, but I don't see right angles. Frank, it's a rhombus. If you see that it has 4 congruent sides, you know it's either a square or a rhombus, and you can tell the difference because a square is going to have right angles and a rhombus won't. Okay. Interesting. Why is it like this? Yeah, mess with it later. All right, example D. Looks like we've got 1 set of parallel sides here. Well, that eliminates all of them except one shape. What do we call a quadrilateral that has 1 set, Addison? This is a trapezoid. Yes, trapezoid. Now you'll notice they also tell you that these 2 sides here are opposite. The opposite sides over here are congruent to each other. That's not necessarily always going to be true on a trapezoid. It's true on this one, but you'll definitely notice there's only 1 set of parallel sides, and there was only 1 kind of shape up here that had exactly 1 pair of parallel sides. So really, here are your options. Does it have no parallel sides, that's probably a kite then, right? Since that's our new one. I mean, it could just still be a quadrilateral. This one doesn't have any parallel sides. So I would just say this is a quadrilateral, but chances are it could be a kite. Good, put that on my desk. Thank you, Parker. Does it have one set of parallel sides? Guaranteed to be a trapezoid. Or does it have two sets? It's guaranteed to be in the parallelogram family. And I just have to decide if it's a parallelogram, a rectangle, a rhombus, or a square. Okay, let's go on to example E. I see 4 right angles. Opposite sides are equal. What do you call this shape? Hunter? More specific. It's a parallelogram that has right angles. It's a rectangle. Yep, it's a rectangle. And again, you're not wrong by saying that it's a parallelogram. By definition, it is. But I want the most specific name. If your parallelogram has 90-degree angles, it is a rectangle. Lainey, you writing this down? Okay. Example F, be careful here. Be very careful. Thomas, what do you think this is? Yes, it is a parallelogram. It is not a rhombus. It looks very close to being a rhombus, but you'll notice it uses 1 tick mark for the top and bottom sides, and it uses 2 tick marks for the left and right sides. So not all 4 sides are the same here. They look like they're very close to being the same, but they're not. So if you have a parallelogram that doesn't have 4 equal sides, it can't be a rhombus. This is just a parallelogram. P-A-R-A-L-L-E-L-O-gram. Hannah. I haven't decided. I might give you some credits, but you definitely wouldn't get full credit because it's going to say on your test, give them the most specific name. All right, that leaves us with our last one here. G, what shape do we have here for G, Caden? Another trapezoid, 1 set of parallel sides. Trapezoid. All right, so there's some practice on how to classify these parallelogram or these quadrilaterals. A lot of them are in the parallelogram family. Now let's talk about how to find a missing angle measurement. Now you might remember that a triangle has 180 degrees. Well, watch what happens when I take a quadrilateral and connect the 2 non-adjacent vertices like that. How many triangles did I just make? 2. Now, you're not allowed to do that again. You can't cross your lines because that would make 4 triangles, and that's not true. I could have connected these 2. I'm still going to have 2 triangles. So I want you to take 180 degrees, and I want you to double it. Every quadrilateral is going to have 360. By the way, the little pattern that I did right there, that works for every shape, every polygon. So every time you add a side, you'll talk about this next year in 8th grade. Every time you add a side to a polygon, it's going to bump up by another triangle. So it's going to be 180 degrees bigger. So you go from 180 to 360 to 540 to 720 to 900, and it just keeps going. Every time you add a side, it adds a triangle. So if you add all 4 angles together, you'll always get 360, and that's how I'm going to solve these next problems, because in these next problems, they're going to give me all but one of the angles, just like in a triangle. Our triangle problems, they give you 2 and ask you for the 3rd one. You have to subtract from 180. Here, they're going to give you 3 and ask for the 4th one. And you have to subtract from 360. Here's another way you can remember it has 360 degrees. What's the number 1 quadrilateral you think of when I say that word? Probably a square, right? A square has 4 right angles. What's a right angle measurement or measure? 90 times 4 is 360. So you could figure it out mathematically. If you forget the 360, you can just do 4 times 90 because 4 right angles in a square. All of them have 360. All right, so with your calculators out, let's find our missing angle measurements. This one I'm trying to find angle X. So this is what I want your work to look like on your work paper tonight. And yes, we're going to need a work paper because we have some calculations to do. You're going to add the 3 angles together, oops, that you do have, and you're going to subtract it from 360. So you just say 360 minus, what are we subtracting here? What is our 3 angles that we do have add up to? 260. And what's 360 minus 260? What is it? 100. So we're just going to put x equals 100. If you want to put a degree symbol, you can. I think on your quiz, I just had you write x equals. So I'm okay with just putting x equals 100. It says now classify the quadrilateral. Does this quadrilateral have any parallel sides? No. So it's not a trapezoid because that would have one pair. And it's not a parallelogram because that would have two pairs. That leaves you with a kite. Does it look like the adjacent sides are equal to each other? Does it look like there's any equal sides here? No. So it's not a kite. And if you can't classify a quadrilateral as a kite, a parallelogram, or one of the descendants, or a trapezoid, then you would just say quadrilateral. I'm just going to abbreviate. There's nothing special about this one. It's just a quadrilateral. All right, what about example B? If we add the three angles we do have together, that'd be the 81-degree angle, the 124-degree angle, and then what kind of angle is down here? 90. What do you get when you add those three together? 295. So we'll just take 360 minus 295. Really? Can you tell me what 360 minus 295 is? 65. All right, we found our missing angle. All right, I see a right angle. Are any of the sides parallel? Okay, so that takes out trapezoids and parallelograms. Is it a kite? None of the sides are equal? Okay, so again, this is just a quadrilateral, nothing fancy about it. That's the difference between quadrilaterals and triangles. Every triangle can be classified. It's either right obtuse or acute. Sorry, I couldn't think of that word. It's either right obtuse or acute, or it's scalene, isosceles, or equilateral. Every triangle can be classified. But not every quadrilateral can be classified. Example C. I bet you we could do this one without doing any work. If you had to guess, what do you think angle X would be? It is 80. Nice job. Yep, this one's just 80. The reason for that is because this shape is what? What would I classify this shape as? Not a rectangle. It's a parallelogram. P-A-R-A-L-L-E-L-O-G-R-A-M. It's a parallelogram. Now, remember parallelograms have opposite sides that are equal. What allows that to happen is having opposite angles that are equal. And so if you have an 80-degree angle on the top right, the bottom left angle has to be 80 degrees as well. Now, if you did 360 minus 100, 180 is 280, you're still going to get 80 degrees. But this is a parallelogram, and so that's always going to be true about parallelograms. What kind of shape is this next one? It's a trapezoid. Unfortunately, that's not going to help us find X without doing any work. We're still going to have to find out what X is. So we're going to take 90 degrees plus 90 degrees plus 118 degrees, and we're going to subtract that away from 360. What is 90, 90, and 118, Maddox? $298, okay. And what do you get when you subtract those? 62, so X equals 62. That leaves us with our last shape. Did you notice the opposite angles are equal with 122 and 122? So what's X going to be equal to? 58. So that means it's at least a parallelogram. However, and I'm not 100% sure on this, it does look like the sides are equal. What would I call it if it looks like a parallelogram with 4 equal sides, Frank? A rhombus. I'm 100% sure it's a parallelogram because the opposite angles are equal. I'm like 95% sure it's a rhombus. I would need someone to measure the sides, but it does look like they're equal. Although looking like they're equal Doesn't mean it's actually equal, as we found out for this problem, because these are definitely not, because they're 2 tick marks and the 1 tick mark, but I'm going to go ahead and say this one's a rhombus until I'm proven wrong. Okay. That's it. That's your homework. You can go and get started on your big ideas.